Yeah. Dissociate. Oh, that's great. Okay, Chris, I believe you and Bill are going to lead a bit of a conversation now, but we would certainly call upon anyone in the audience who might have any questions. I know this is an area that we've talked about often, is how do we cross that bridge? And yeah, we're very excited to read your book, Bill, to learn how to do that. But I'll hand over to you, Chris and Bill, to
I
have a
think
conversation.
Opportunity for other people to ask whatever they like. I was very fortunate to spend, an hour online with Bill recently. I guess the only question I didn't ask you, Bill, at the time was the title "Better Teaching and Better Learning" reminds me a little bit of Bob Emiliani's. It was a better systems, better results. Was that intentional or not at all?
It was interesting that you noticed that. It was not intentional. Bob's was like, one is the cause and one's the effect. But in our thinking, ours were both effects. Better teaching, better learning would be outcomes. But better teaching, of course, can cause better learning. So I think in my mind, I don't want to speak for Vincent, I think it's more like these are the two outcomes we want to see with continuous improvement. Those are powerful outcomes for a higher education institution. So.
I'm going to jump in and ask a question, or maybe two questions if I can.
Great.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Chris. I am super excited for when this book actually makes it out, because I think for so long there's been these silos, and we need to. It's got to be so much more porous than it currently is. My first question is probably around what you were talking about, data and evidence, and yep, that work from Strathclyde is fantastic in giving us sort of an introductory approach to measurement. Something I've always been really interested in, and there's a book by an Australian politician called Randomisters, which is all about randomised trials. Randomised trials are very common within scientific experimentation, but it's always struck me that we never use them in continuous improvement to measure different pathways or to measure how different things are done. And I have raised this before, and I've been told, oh, it's not ethical to do something to one group of students and not to another. I'd be really interested, though, in your perspective on whether that sort of scientific method approach is something that we should be seeking to use and to adopt.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great question. And I might disagree with you can't do one thing to one group of students and not to the other. As long as you're doing what you think is the current best practice to one group, you're not withholding something from them and then doing something plus to another group, you'd be okay. But doing a true experiment, I mean, that's the kind of science we would love to do, where you'd have, randomized this, you pick random people from a population, you would randomly assign them to a condition, the CI condition and the non-CI condition. You would use double-blind studies where maybe the people don't know which condition they're in. I mean, that's what you'd love to have in a true experiment. It doesn't work in the real world. It works in laboratory studies. It works in some very, very expensive medical studies, but it's really, really hard to do in the field, to do a field experiment like that. So there's a book, and I'm not going to be able to pull up the author's names off the top of my head. It's called Quasi-Experimentation, and it talks about all different variations of experimentation that, it's not the robust, true, full experiment that I mentioned earlier, but it chips away at maybe one piece of it. So maybe people are randomly assigned to conditions, but they're not randomly pulled from a population. So it's not as good as, but for the purposes of what you might be trying to do, a quasi-experiment will get you the answer that you need. So I think there are ways to get there. Again, if you have someone who knows how to do field research, they can think about, okay, how, even before you go and do your lean study, they can help you say, okay, would it be possible for us to pull a bunch of people who want to be on a lean team, for example, and then randomly assign some of those people to be on a lean team and the others not, run the Kaizen event or whatever, and then ask those two groups of faculty, how do you feel about X, Y, and Z, about, understanding how to improve your university, or, feeling that the university is investing in you. And we could see some differences in reactions to having participated in the Kaizen event. What's the upskilling, the positive attitudes, the engagement of faculty, the feeling respected. It can become a piece of the argument that we make, is that this is good. It has a positive impact on the faculty or whoever the team members are. So I think there are ways to get at some of this. But some will be harder to do. Some would be hard to do in a single university, but much easier to do across universities because of sample sizes. You don't want to do anything with a sample of 6 people because it's very hard to show a significant result with 6 people. But if we had 10 universities, each doing it with 6 people, and you got 60 people, now you're starting to get into the ability to really do some statistical tests. I think we can get there.
Cool. And if I may, a second question, sorry. Maybe this is the next book for you, but for me, the voice that is missing from this conversation is that of the student. So we keep talking about putting our people at the center of everything. You're now talking from a faculty perspective. We've talked about it from an operations professional's perspective. Where is the student perspective, and how do we ensure that we understand what that is, and how do we embed those wonderful human-centered design approaches into this type of work?
Yeah, great point. And I don't, I'm glad you raised it, because I don't want it to be that we're ignoring the students here. They are front and center because they're the ones we're teaching. They're the ones who are learning. They're the ones who are going to go out and go on the job, and they need the skills, the knowledge, the abilities that we give them. But we'll have the faculty member be the person who's that frontline person who's in Gemba with the students, pulling that information from the students. So some tools, in one of the case studies that we have that's been done of Lean in the classroom, at the end of every class session, they do a 3-minute quick survey. And one of the questions might be, what could we do to improve our teaching? And every week, the faculty members get that data from students. Every week, they respond back to the students and say, here's what you suggested. Here's why we can't do that. Or great request. Here's what we're going to, next week, here's what we're going to be doing in that class that reflects the feedback that you gave us on how to improve our teaching. So that is one example of where the student is. They're not waiting till the end of the semester and asking the student, how did the course go, where the student can't make any change to whatever happened to them over the past 15 weeks. It'll be, just in time kind of changes that would be taking place. So students would be front and center here. But I agree with your point. We certainly never want to lose sight of who is the beneficiary. I don't want to call them customers, because that will annoy a lot of people, especially faculty. So they're the true beneficiary of higher education, and we always have to keep them, in mind when we're doing these things. So I'm glad you raised it. Thank you.
Bill, I have another question. You're clearly a prolific Lean author. What would you say is the #1 misconception around Lean? And how have you been able to overcome that to encourage adoption?
Lean just has it doesn't mean anything to people, and sometimes it means the wrong thing to people. So I think when was it Chris who came up with the term lean many years ago, which was probably a better term than calling it the Toyota production system. Imagine how that would have gone in higher education. It means a lot once you're in lean. There's a lot of waste. Waste is fat. A lean piece of meat has all the fat removed. That's lean. That makes sense to us. But lean in some communities means that you're riffing people. You're getting rid of bodies, not getting waste out of processes. Lean equals mean. Lean stands for less employees are needed. So those sorts of things run out there. So and it should not be less employees, it should be fewer employees, by the way. I don't think it has a lot of meaning to people. And if we don't have a good elevator speech, we're doomed. So you notice that I haven't used the word lean a lot, and it's not title in the book and the slides. We're really just going to go with continuous improvement. We don't think that has the negative connotation that a lot of business practices have. Particularly if we can say continuous improvement is like science. And we think there's a very strong argument there, and we hope it's the right kind of twist for faculty to really understand it, wrap their arms around it, and say, oh, of course, I'm trying every research study I do, I'm trying to make I'm trying to solve a problem. I'm taking one step further in new knowledge. Well, welcome to continuous improvement.
Continuous improvement, yeah.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Kate?
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
It is all about those labels, isn't it? And finding the best one that fits for the circumstance that you have.
Yeah, and it's hard. And then we all start saying, oh, we better not use lean here, or we better not use it there. And then all of a sudden, we're not even sure what we're all doing because we're calling it different things. And that creates a lot of construct problems. Are you really doing lean, even though your name is different? So it'll create problems, but I'm not sure of another way around it. It's I don't know if we could rehabilitate lean to the point that a faculty member would say, I've heard so much about lean, I'm ready to embrace it. I think it would be a tough sell. It could work, but I think that's why we're using CI rather than lean. So.
I think you've made a wise choice. Great. Are there any more questions from the audience? And you're very welcome to pop them in the chat if you prefer.
Yeah, and I'll say while we're waiting for questions to pop up, I just see this as like, well, I don't want to call it the last frontier, but I want to call it the important frontier. It's like we know so much about the land masses on our planet, but we keep saying, but we know so little about the oceans, and the oceans are like 70% of the planet's surface. If you think of higher education like a planet, and the land masses are those backroom operations, those support operations. And it's like saying, but the biggest part is unstudied. We don't work at it. That gets me really excited for why we really need to be doing lean in the classroom. So we want to help continuous improvement practitioners make that leap in. We want to give them some tools to say, here, faculty member, read this chapter, and if you're interested, come see me, and we can talk about how we can do CI in your classroom. I'm here to help. Rather than them have to go by themselves and say, hey, and I'd like to introduce you to whatever you're calling it, lean or whatever you call it in university. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a very cool analogy. Chris, I hear you like that too. But Jen has asked a question in the chat, Bill. So what is the most successful way that you've seen academics start to engage with lean or continuous improvement?
There isn't a lot out there, but I think you need to find with lean, you need to find the faculty member that's open-minded and is looking to be better, whatever it is, better researcher, better teacher, better. And you can bring them in, and we call, those people who are the early adopters or the ones who just have an interest in things that are new, try to grab them. And if you have a teaching and learning center on your campus or on your campuses, go to the person who runs the teaching and learning center and said, who are those faculty members that are really very open-minded, they're embracing new ways to become better teachers, they're passionate about improving what they do. They'll know who the faculty are at your university, who probably be a good starting group to work with. And then once you get them on board, those early adopters, and particularly if you can find some who are influential faculty members, not just junior faculty members who are trying to earn their stripes, but some senior faculty members who are really committed to being the best teachers they can, then I think you can start to turn that flywheel, get a couple more faculty members interested, which then gets a department interested, which then gets a couple departments interested. So, get the flywheel going. But the Teaching and Learning Center lead at Bowling Green has been really terrific, not only giving us feedback on what we were thinking about putting in the book, what would resonate with faculty members, but they're just a really great resource of who the right faculty are and, what kinds of things faculty are looking for and so forth. Hope that answers your question, Jen. And Jen, congratulations. You're probably in the worst hour of this session. I thought, midnight was tough, but boy, that's a tough time you are, 3 o'clock.
Hopefully there's a sleep.
Thank you so much.
That's a really good point, Bill, in terms of if we think about Elizabeth Beattie's presentation and that 3%, if you can find that it's almost like an influential coalition of the willing, right? The ones that already have the desire and, the forward thinking to want to improve, and then just harness that 3%, hopefully, to roll it out to the rest of the institution. Yes, and there may be other people, but I know someone in a teaching and learning center would be able to help you figure out who that 3% is. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to send out your own survey and say, hey, who's interested in doing continuous improvement to improve teaching and learning? I know what your response rate is going to be to that survey, because most faculty are unlikely to, they'll see that as spam, but the Teaching and Learning Center director, or whatever title is, would really be able to help you pull up those people pretty quickly. They would know. Definitely. All right. We're coming up to the last minutes of this session. Last call for any questions. Or cheers for 4 minutes to 1, is it, Bill? And Jen, you're also quite late as well, it seems.
Yeah, we're at about 10 o'clock in Santa Barbara, so not quite as late as Bill, actually.
Oh, not so bad, not so bad. Well done you for putting your camera on. No, that's fabulous. Great. Well, Bill, this means you will be able to go to sleep now. That'll be good. Yeah, it's been up for a bit. Yeah, you've been online all this time. It's been a great conference. You guys should be congratulated. It's just been terrific. So thank you for all your work. Not a worry, and not without the help of people such as yourself and Chris. So thank you so much for the fabulous interview. This was our encore session and a live chat afterwards. It's really brilliant. So thank you so much.
Great.
And thanks.
And anybody, feel free to contact me. I think I'm easy to find. wbalzer@bgsu.edu. Yeah, happy to talk more.
Yeah, Bill's email.
Happy to talk to your faculty.
Bill's email is on our program if you do need to reach out. But
Yeah.
Bill, best wishes for the next steps of your publication.
Thank you.
We're all waiting with bated breath to get our hands on that to have a look. So that'll be fabulous. But yeah, thank you again. And thank you so much to Chris.
My pleasure. It was a thrill. It was great.
I think we can kindly say good night now.
Good night.
Very good. All
Okay.
right.
Bye-bye.